about time you tune in. We speak life for reality. Our thoughts are not fiction. No one gets an opinion on the topics that we mention with the Holy Ghost boldness. God's in control of this. Real talk with real men for purpose and focus. Growth to get better. See, man up, we better. To change for the better. The future getting better. True man of God, leading, going hard. It's time to level up with the Man Up Squad. Now man up. You got this. M-A-N-U-P. Man up. Then man up. M-A-N-U-P. Then man up.
Hey, there we go. Welcome to Man Up. We are so excited to join you today. We have our normal cast, and then we have some addition that we're so excited to be a part of this. They're not pitch hitting, they've just been signed up for the contract, 4-term contract. They're now on the team. Amen. As the song came on, Man Up. We're going to talk about today about manning up. That's our subject today. Before we get started, we're going to ask you to introduce yourself so that our cast members and our friends will know who you are.
I am M&T Derek Burton.
I am Pastor Marcus Bevins.
Minister Matt Barty.
Brother Anthony Meadows.
Elder Juan Beverly.
Hi, I'm Deacon Marcus Cole.
And I am James Bond, 007-439. Box it, please. Hey guys, it's good to see y'all again. It's good to be here. We're going to talk about things that men have to deal with. Man up. Let's get to where we are today. How do we handle sorrow, grief? How do we handle the passing of a brother, the passing of a family member? Where are you? I want to talk about several things, but I want to talk about where are your emotions with that? What type of person, how do you handle those emotions? What do you do? At this point, anybody can jump in at any time to talk about it. Pastor Marcus, you're probably the expert on it since you work in the area of grieving and dealing with people that have to deal with death. You meet it in some sort of form. So you have some expertise on it, just as well as Matt, because you lost your frog one time. So you understand how it is to lose animals.
Ribbit.
Yeah. So we want to touch that. Let's go. Who wants to talk?
I'll start. I think that whenever you deal with grief or sorrow or death, any of those, areas, you have to start with the fact that it's reality. Part of the problem that leads to depression and all of that is because we won't accept that it's real. So you have two different stages that you enter into. You deal with, you deal with the mourning and you deal with the grief. And most people think that they've dealt with grief while they're dealing with mourning. Mourning is the initial notice that you got it and you're in shock, but you haven't started grieving until you accept that it's real. And grieving usually doesn't start until after the funeral, because during that process you're doing so much, people bombarding you, trying to love on you, all of that. So you're dealing with the mourning of it, but the reality of it, when all of the calls stop, all of the visits stop, and then you start dealing with that this is real, and now you start trying to figure out how does life work without this person being consistent in my life.
So the mourning can have a limitation to it, but the grieving can take a long time.
Absolutely.
Some people say get over it. What they're really saying is get over the mourning part.
Right.
You can't stay in that bed forever.
Mm-hmm.
But the grief, it's a journey.
Grief requires coping skills. Mourning is just you dealing with your emotions and the shock of it. But you have to learn coping skills. And the reason that people end up in depression is because they never seek help on how to cope with grief. So they just mask it or hide it and then try to internally deal with it and struggle.
That's good. I thought mourning and grief were the same thing. I don't know if I'm by myself. Maybe I am. But I didn't know there was a difference. And
It's taught in Bible study, but y'all take a time to come to it. Let's go.
missed that class. That's good to know. I mean, it's helpful to know that, because then you have some direction, and you can, from lack of a better word, like compartmentalize where you are. So, okay, this is the phase I'm in now, and this is how I deal with it.
Okay. Anybody else wanted to say something?
Yeah, so for me personally,
How you doing, Marcus Cole?
how you doing,
Good to
Pastor?
see you. God bless you.
Me personally, how I deal with grief, I just try to stay in the presence of God. It brings a sense of peace for me, and just knowing how, just being in God's presence. I know the Bible speaks about absence from the body to be present with the Lord. You know, so in that moment of accepting peace and accepting reality, like Pastor Marcus mentioned, for me it brings a sense of comfort being in God's presence.
Matt?
To piggyback a little bit about what Marcus Cole just said, to be absent from the body, present with the Lord. I think the relationship with the person that you're grieving over, like I lost my grandmother in 17, but I knew her relationship with God. She was a prayer warrior, and when I saw her when she passed away, she had like a smile on her face. So she passed away peacefully, happily. She knew where she was going. I think she laid and said, "I'm ready to go." So I think it's easier to deal with when you know the relationship the person had, and you know the legacy they left and what they instilled in you.
But is that dealing with the mourning process, or is that dealing with the grieving, or
I
both?
mean, even to this day, you know, like obviously, like the mourning process when you go see the body, the funeral. But when holidays come up, I focus on the memories, the good memories. I don't get sad that she's not here anymore. I kind of process the fact that she was here for a purpose. Part of that purpose was me, right, and my family and my mother and everything, and what she left and instilled in us still exists to this day.
That's
So
good.
that's something for me to be proud of and smile about.
Anthony?
Well, when it comes down to mourning and grief, if I didn't have a relationship with the Lord, I would have been a total mess. Like, my first time I experienced mourning and grief, I went through a deep depression, lost myself completely, started doing a whole bunch of crazy things, way out of order. And I didn't have a relationship with the Lord at that time. And the second time I experienced a heavy, deep mourning and grief, that's when I came to learn the Lord. That's when I came to know the Lord. So once I accepted Christ, now I have a whole total different outlook when it comes down with death. You know, I look at it as freedom, you know, a release, you know, so that's how I deal with it now. I got peace. That's if I know that person had a relationship with Christ, you know, then I feel a lot more comfortable. Then I'm able to move on.
Derek?
Just like Minister Matt said, it hits different on the person that passed. 3 weeks ago, I lost a friend of mine that was served with me in the military in a car accident. That grief, that mourning was slight. You know, even though we knew each other for 18 years, we wasn't, you know, real close. But when Pastor Eddie passed, that grief, that was a whole different grief altogether, because that man instilled something in me, my family, my sons. So when that loss came about, it rocked me for a minute. It was to the point where I had to like sit down in my basement and just chill and just think about it and think about the part that he was gone, and that, you know, our car rides together and stuff like that, and the information that he would instill in me, that I wouldn't get that no more from him. So like Minister Matt said, it is the relationship you have with that person can affect your grief altogether. So you may think one death affects you one way, and that's the way every death is going to be, but it's not. It's always going to be a rainbow of emotions depending upon that person.
I want to talk on the subject, especially we being men, because we handle things differently. I want to ask y'all in short answers, if you can. Anthony kind of touched it a little bit. He said when he wasn't saved, he grieved and he went the opposite. He did some crazy things. What is your system of grief? Now, my system of grief is I have to be active. So it's like everything that ever happened to me, if you quarantine me and lock me down and start playing this violin, that's not healthy for me. But me to interact, to close the chapter, to do things with my mom, with Pastor Eddie, Pastor Green, and the list goes on, my brother, my sister. I have to maintain action for me. So it looks like nothing bothers me, but really that's not my mourning process. That's my grieving process. I'm still mourning. Is that the right word? Is that right? I mean, right? Is it mourning? Yeah. I'm still mourning over all of it. But my grieving is stand strong, move ahead, stay focused. What is your position? Alawan, I would definitely want to ask you that question because you experienced that at one time and sometime in your life. And we're not just talking about how do we handle the disappointments of it? You know what I'm saying? Not just death, but let's use the word disappointment, period. What is our cycle?
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. It's I'll say initially my first experience of it, I went into a dark place, and I was in a dark place for quite some time, and only because one, I didn't voice where I was, and thought that, okay, well, I'll just get through this on my own. Then the second thing was I didn't say anything because I didn't want it to come off as like a sign of a weak man. You know, and I'll deal with it. I'll get through this. And the more I said that, the deeper the rabbit hole seemed to go. And once I got free from that, disappointments comes like, okay, well, this is what it is. And I learned a lot about that even from my daughter. You know, there's some instances where she has to go for certain procedures with the doctor, and I'm just looking at all these shots she's getting. She just laughing and like, okay, this is where we are. This is where we are. This is what has to happen. And then we laugh and joke about it afterwards. And so the worst is, you know, that a merry heart does good like a medicine. So now I'm in a place where, okay, disappointment, grief occurs. I'm gonna laugh at this because just like spring, summer, fall, and winter, this is a season and it don't last always. It's gonna change. And what's gonna help me get out of that season quicker is how I respond to it.
Do you think that it's necessary, and I'm actually Pastor Marcus to come in after this question, to seek medical when you're in that depression place, or do you think time will bring you out?
For me, it was necessary, and not to discount that. Well, yeah, I'm a believer, but God made it available.
You're not discounting that. Don't
He
tell
made
people.
it a believer.
Right. God doesn't create anything on this earth that He
Yeah.
doesn't use.
That's right.
So don't discount that.
And it worked, and it's working.
For me, I generally accept that it's real and then move forward. I started training myself at a young age that life and death go hand in hand. Death is a part of life. You can't live and not die. So while I love everyone that is in my life, I understand that they have to die. And I don't know when that day is, but whenever it comes, it has to be okay. I can't force them to stay here or to remain because it's not my choice. God is the orchestrator of that, and He makes no mistakes. So while that seems like the easy or right answer, it's what I trained myself to understand about life and death. And so I accept that it's real, and then I move forward. And I always maintain the memories, and I always reflect, and I'm a processor and all that kind of stuff, but I accept that it's real, and I move forward.
Okay, one more person answer that question, and then we're going to go into another question because of time. Anybody wants to ask?
So this may be a little odd or different of how I deal with grief and different things. When I was younger, I gravitated a lot to my grandfather, a man of wisdom. Before he passed, he prophesied that I would be a deacon. Didn't know that that was the path that God had led me on. When my grandfather passed, I used with the teachings, I was looking for another teacher. So I moved and gravitated from my grandfather after he passed to my coworker. Then from my coworker to Pastor Eddie. When Pastor Eddie passed, I moved on to Pastor Rice. The same teachings and the same wisdom, that's just the kind of person that I gravitate to things like that. And for me, it's like when a person passed, I just look for the next thing that I can find in someone else to continue on with what I had with that person. If that may sound a little odd, that may be something that's helpful for me.
That's really excellent, because all those people that you spoke about created impartation. And when the cup is full, the need of the person is not necessary for the need, is only necessary for the gratification. And we got to know the balance of that. No one should be in your life forever keep filling you. There's got to be somewhere where you return some type of gratification. I want to switch the thing, because I don't want to focus on grief that much. We all are grieving over Pastor Rice and Pastor Eddie. Pastor Eddie and Pastor Rice will be forever in our memory. I just thank God that we don't have a truckload of names. You know, Tony Boston is another one that always impacts me. When our son's in the gospel, most of y'all know him, being in our church and the foundation of the ministry. There's just things that will always remain in us. And some more. I don't want to start calling names and get in trouble, but this is the question I want to ask you. How do we handle disappointment and rejection as a man dealing with relationships? The rejection of a woman not wanting you, or the rejection of children abandoning you. Maybe y'all never had that before. Nobody ever quit y'all, or I'm gonna throw something else out, or cheated on you, and you have to adjust to that. Most of the time, the question is always asked, how do people handle us because we cheated on them or abandoned them? But how do we handle abandonment as men? Or you handle? I'm gonna ask you about you. If you don't have an answer, don't ask a question. You ready, Anthony?
Yes, sir. That's really interesting that you asked that, because I've experienced that as a young guy, and throughout all my life, whenever I had abandonment or any type of issues like that, I would just get angry, and I stopped crying. Like I realized I didn't cry. I would just get angry, fight, angry. And thank God that I met Christ. Thank God for a relationship with God, because that's what saved me. So now I changed. It really doesn't bother me anymore, because I got Christ. I'm good. I can roll off. I can roll with it. I'm good now, but it wasn't always like that.
So are you saying that the relationship with Christ created a man up to you? That you begin to man up to the reality of you can live in a world where people don't have to want you. And
Yes.
you can sow into people that don't have to sow back.
Yes.
It's a balance. Anybody else got any questions?
Yeah, I'll say much of the same. I would, of course, names change to protect the innocent, but I would find myself.
Hold on, we gotta fix his microphone. Try to get a microphone from somebody who ain't talking.
Praise the Lord. I would, in those seasons, I find myself, I would focus on crafts, whatever, if it was an art form, if it was theater, for one. I was trained in musical theater as an amateur, and so, and even with things like building models and stuff, I would find some other activity to become, I won't say expert in, but to develop a craft. Because if I stayed in that mental space too long, it was going to be ugly. So I redirected that energy.
Pastor Mark.
For me, most times rejection and disappointment breed determination and motivation for me. I'm not one that's easily deterred, or there's always another door. So if I'm rejected, there's another door, there's another opportunity, there's another way to achieve whatever the goal was or what have you. I've been cheated on, turned into a whole baby. And so, it was a whole baby. Yeah, I got cheated on, and she got pregnant.
Oh, I thought, Because I didn't see that part of your ministry. But go ahead.
Yeah. So, this is, I mean, I've been married for a long time. This was prior to my
of course,
wife
absolutely.
now, of course. But, yeah, so, but it was just one of those things where it's life. And, one of the things that my mother taught me a long time ago.
So not to cut you off, because that's good. And I know your concept is to move on, to develop. But how did you handle the pain of that as a man? Were there any pain in
Oh, it was definitely pain. It was definitely pain. I was probably in shock for a minute. And the reality was, like, I didn't find out that she was pregnant. I found out that she had a baby because she had to go away. She had to go away, with her family, and was supposed to come back in like, a month, and just stayed away. And I was fed that it was, the family, we got to do this, we got to do that. And then by the time she came back with a baby.
Let's see, somebody had to talk me off the edge. Some things you have to find someone to talk you off that ledge, because something like that is like my investment, and like I'm ready to jump. I'm not saying what I'm saying is right, but there's odd thoughts like that. Am I off? I'm Derek.
No, you're not off at all. High school sweetheart. I've only thought about marrying 2 women in my life. One is my wife as current, and the other one is my high school sweetheart. Plan on getting married, everything. Till one day she rolls up in my place of employment, Baskin Robbins, shout out to Baskin Robbins. And she had nothing but hickeys on her neck, and they weren't for me. So the audacity of the woman to roll up in my place of employment with that, and then play it off like, it was just her and her best friend, which was a male, and they were just playing around one day. And the pain of it, because I saw myself with this woman, for my young future, and it broke me. It was like, I can't believe this. Wow. So I just went on, to keep it real, I still stayed with her after that because I thought we could reconcile. But then it became a pattern, not a pattern of cheating.
Yeah,
but
pattern hook, more
no,
hookies?
not that. No, that never happened again. Trust me. Because I talked to the dude after that. So, but it was just, it was just a pattern of, I guess, the Lord showing me that this wasn't the right one.
Right.
So eventually we separated, and whatever the case may be. But that pain lasted for some time after,
Maybe she never was the right one,
True.
because you got the right one now.
Amen to that one. Jesus.
When you was telling that story, man, I'm gonna let you say something after this. But when you was telling that story, I just felt like you might have needed a hug. Do y'all all feel the same way that you might need a hug? Matt, go ahead. I'm just messing with you.
I think I was in college, and I found out that this girl moved on from me, but I didn't know she moved on. I would say she cheated because we weren't like what they call like exclusive. I didn't realize she had just went on and just moved forward. But like the way I found out, like it was like a surprise. Like I walked out of the dorm and I was like, "Oh, you with?" I ain't say nothing in that moment, but she was with him, and I was just kind of like, "Oh, okay." But I had myself to blame too, because I mentioned like we weren't exclusive, and she was looking for commitment. But I also had to realize that I wasn't willing to give her that commitment, and realizing that I took that risk to say I'm not ready for commitment, not knowing that she was gonna like move on and get somebody that was willing to give her that commitment.
I think that some people think that men don't have any trauma or pain after someone chooses to leave them, abandon them, or affect them in ways, because, quote unquote, all dogs are men. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Not knowing that some of the greatest hurt has been to a man is from another woman, mm-hmm. or a woman you assumed that had your back, and then she switches up on you, and that's trauma to us. That's a type of trauma, and they always want you to like get over it, but in reality, that's the way we treat them when we don't want them either. Mm-hmm. We had what we had, get over it. Not knowing that when you make an investment, when you make a blend with someone, when you begin to break it, you tear pieces of it off. You could never, with your hand, never tear a paper evenly. Even the fine prints in the paper is never straight. And I don't think that people don't know how much it hurts to be torn. So I think that we as men need to really probably sometime express what we need for our own healing in our relationships with our family. There's some men, it changes them for the people they love to demote them, to talk down on them, to say they're no good. And the woman is expressing what she lacks, but in expressing what she lacks, she's tearing down who he is. Because there are some things that are given to you, but there's most things you have to build to get. And if to work so hard to be who you are, to be a Marcus Cole, to be a Pastor Elder Warren, it takes work. It takes work to be an Elder Warren. It takes work to be a Pastor Marcus, Matt. It takes work. It takes a lot of work to be a Pastor Tony Smith. And in 1 minute, someone verbally or physically dismiss it. It's tormenting. Especially if it's to the people you love. At the funeral, the man said, he said, respect the name. That our name must maintain some respect. This is my opinion. In 3 minutes left, and we're gonna throw this at you. That's the word love. I think that the word love, if it's ever be given, it should never erase. If you can erase love, you never had love. You had the need or the desire of what love brings you, but you never had love. How many agree or disagree with that? And if you do, what, why, how?
I agree. I think that whenever you deal with love, there are levels to it. And I think that sometimes some doors get closed, but you should not go from love to hate.
Absolutely.
Access
Or
may be
vengeance.
access may be denied to other areas, but if you loved, then you should still love.
Love is permanent, right? Like you can't, and I think if you use the word love and you don't attach it to something that's permanent or like lifelong, then you shouldn't use that word. It's a different word, like strong or whatever the case may be, but it can't be love if you can switch it on and off.
You can't get tired with love.
Yeah, I was just thinking that like love is forever. Love is true. Love is deep. So you can't, like you said, everybody said, you can't turn off love. You can't stop loving your family, your blood. You can't stop loving them. You might not like them, but you can't stop loving them. So that's forever.
I think we need to use the word love, but I think we got to put the action behind the word love. A lot of times we just say it and don't have any action behind what we're doing, and most times women react off our actions. So I think it's most importantly that when you say the word love or you walking in love, that you got to put the action behind with love.
Exactly. Love, you should understand what comes behind that. You should understand what that is attached to, what that all entails, because once you say it, like you said, you can't just pull that back because there's feelings in it, there's emotions in it, there's a whole lot of things wrapped up in love. So when you think you're trying to pull it back, you're really not. You just, like Anthony said, you just don't like that person at that point because love is eternal, love is always. So just be careful when you say it.
Yeah, and love has multiple languages. You can't put love in a box and say, when you do this, that you love me. One of my love languages is giving. That's one of my love languages. That's probably one of my strongest love languages, giving. I've known people that one of their love languages is fussing. If they don't, especially in age, when you get an age, if they ain't fussing with you, they don't love you. That's their way of saying I'm concerned. It's their way of saying I want to be attached. So, and the thing about it, love languages come out of character. Comes out of character. So if you can dismiss love, it means that your character is weakened. You don't have good character. It means that your character has no balance to it. Love is the only tool that you can match with pain. Love covers a multitude of sin. So it's the only tool that makes you say, I'm not leaving him. I'm not leaving her. I'm going to stay there, and I know they're wrong. It's the only tool that can do mortal combat with pain and still stand. The only tool. So the reason why we got away with a lot of stuff, because somebody loved us. My time is up. Yours is too. I'm looking at 1 o'clock, and 11 o'clock say goodbye. We'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us. Share this. Tell your neighbors and friends that Man Up, been on the air, and follow us. God bless you. Bye-bye.